Hello friends, welcome back to snippetcoder. We are back with a video. In this video, we will learn how we can integrate the WebSocket in our Flutter application. And like most of the time, we have a requirement to have a real-time notification in our application. And suppose if we have a multiple application like web application, desktop application, and the mobile application, and if we did any action in our web application or desktop application, we need the same notification in our mobile application also. For that purpose also, we can use our socket programming and all. So like in this demo, you can see here we have this application. Whenever the application started, we will get the notification from our socket service, that is your session has been started. And here we are just doing the hard-coded username providing to that socket, and that on the basis of that username we are getting the message and all. So now our session is started. So what we will do, like we have to call the API here, and here in the API we have to pass this user ID, and when we click on the send request, then you will see here in the screen in the mobile application the message will be changed here on the basis of that WebSocket and all. Now if I click on the here send, you can see here in that API we are getting a logout successfully, but in that message, whatever the message we are getting from the socket, here we are getting your session has been terminated. So that's all is happening with the help of the socket programming and all. So before starting the video, if you are new to our channel, subscribe the channel by clicking on the subscribe button and click the bell icon to get notified about our latest videos. Thank you. So in our application, we are going to use one package, that is socket.io, that will be for our Node.js API, and this will be used for enable the real-time events-based communication and all. So implementation is very simple. We have to install the package in our Node.js API, and how accordingly we will do the integration and all. So in the Flutter application also, we are going to use the same package for the client one, and here we have the socket_io_client that will be used for consuming the APIs and all for that Node.js API. So now let's proceed further with the development part. So here we have two folders. First one is the API folder, and second one is the app folder. So inside the API folder, we will initialize our API, cd API npm initialize. So it will ask the package name and everything. So here that package.json file is created here. So now we will install the two packages. First one is for our Express server, and the second package will be for our socketio and all. So both the packages installed here. So here one thing we have to do the change, and here we will put the type will be module, and this will be used for the EC scripts and all. So now we will create one file that will be our index.js file. So here first of all we have to import our HTTP from HTTP. And then we have our import Express server. Then we have to import the server from our socketio server from socketio. Then we have to create the variable for our constant app express. We will create the object here for the express. And then we have our constant server is equal to http dot create server, and this we will use required to create the server here. And then we have to create the object for our io is equal to new server, and we will pass this server here. Then here we will initialize the map to store the association between the user ID and the session ID and all. And here we will write constant user sockets is equal to new map. So after that we have to do the socket event listener and all, and here we have to write io.on, and here we have the connection. Here we have the variable for the socket. Inside that we will just put the log here, console.log connected, and we have to put the socket ID here, socket.id. After that we have to make one event, like whenever user join to our socket, and from there we have to just call our user join event from the mobile application, from wherever we have to call that event. And for that we have to put here socket dot on, and here we have to put the event name user hyphen join. Here we have the data, and from here what of the data we are sending from our mobile application, like we are from there we are sending the username, and that we have to store in this our user sockets here. And here we have to write user sockets dot set, and we have to set the value, whatever the value we are sending from there. And here in that key name will be our username, and the value we are setting here our socket ID. So what it will do, like we have created the connection here, and inside the connection we are just listening for the event for the user join, and that event we are calling from our mobile application, and from there we are just passing our username, and on the basis of that username we are just storing that user sockets session and all, and on the basis of the key name will be the username, and the session socket ID will be our whatever the ID we are passing here as a value for that particular key. And then here also we can put socket dot on disconnect event. This will be used whenever the disconnect will be called. Disconnect, whenever the disconnect is happened, we have to remove that particular user and all, and for that we have to just put here the loop here with the for let user ID comma socket ID of user sockets dot entries. We have to loop through that user sockets and all, and here we will check if socket ID is equal to socket dot ID. Then from here we will delete that user. We will put here user socket dot delete, and from here we will delete the particular user here on the basis of that user ID. And then from here we will just break the loop. So this portion of the code will be used for the disconnect. If any user get disconnected, then we have to just remove that particular user from that user socket data and all. And after that we have to put here app dot use, and we have to put the express dot JSON for the API to be work, that JSON API and all. So now here we have to create one sample API, and that API will be for logout. And what it will do, like whenever that logout API will be called, we have to pass the user ID from our that API, and on the basis of that user ID it will check in this user sockets if that user exists or not. If that user exists, it will just emit the event from the WebSocket to our mobile application or wherever we are calling that, and then it will give the message, whatever the message we will provide. And on the basis of that we can also delete the user from our user sockets and all. Here we will write app dot get request, and the endpoint will be API slash logout. Then we have the request response, and here we have to check the user ID is equal to request dot query dot user ID, and here we will check if user ID is not provided. Then we will give the message to the user, return from here response dot status code 400 dot JSON success false. Message will be our user ID is required. After that we will get the socket ID on the basis of that user. Here we will write socket ID is equal to user sockets dot get request, and we have to pass here user ID, and we will check here if that socket ID is found. Then we will do here io dot to, and we have to provide here socket ID dot emit, and we have to put the event name here. That will be our session expired, and whatever the data we have to send here, and we can even send the JSON data also as per the requirement. We are just putting here normal text here, your session has been terminated, and from the response here we will return here. We will copy this one and we'll paste here and change the status code to 200 because this is success here, and the success we will change it to true. And in the message we will write here logout successfully In the else condition, we will copy this one and we will paste here, and we will write here no active session found. So what we did here, we have created one get request for the logout here, and we are checking here the user ID from the query string, and here we are checking if that user ID is not found, then we are throwing the message to the user ID is required, and then we are just checking here the socket ID on the basis of that user ID in our user sockets data and all, and there we are checking if that socket ID is found. Then this is the main part. Whenever we have to send any notification or any communication from our API to our other application, means from socket to the other application, so in that case we have to use io dot and the socket ID. That means the particular that user we have to give. If we not provide any socket ID, then it will give that message to all the users, but we want to give it to the particular user, and in that case we have to put a dot emit, and whatever the event name we have defined there, we have to put here session expired, and here we are the data we are passing here in the text format instead of the JSON format as per the requirement. If you want to send a JSON data, that also you can do. And then you have to just return here status code 200, and success you are providing it true, and the message we are passing here logout successfully. In the else condition, we are putting in no active session found. And the same thing we can also even do here also. Whenever the user successfully login, then also we can give some message here, and the event we will pass here session join, and here we will change the message to your session has been started. So whenever the user join here with that event calling and all with user -join, and then we are just giving return back the message to the user, that is your session has been started here. So from here we have to just start our server here, server dot listen, and the port number we are using here 3500, and in the console we will write here console.log server started on port 3500. So what we did here, we have just created the event for the connection here. Inside that we are just listening for our own events what we are going to create here. First event is our user join, and that event is like whenever we are sending any data from our application to the API, and there we are using user join, and from there we are just providing the username, and on the basis of that we are just setting that user to our user sockets data and all, and in return also we are just emit the message to the user, that is your session has been started. Then we have our disconnect event, and there we are just checking if the user is disconnected, then we are just deleting that user from the sockets and all. Then we have our API get event and get request, and there we have the API for our logout, and then we are just checking here if the user ID is not providing, we are throwing the error user ID is required, and after that we are just checking for the socket ID on the basis of the whatever the user ID we are passing here, and there we are checking if the socket ID is coming, then we are just emitting one event, that is session expired, your session has been terminated, and in the response of the JSON we are just passing here success true, and the message we are providing here logout successfully. In the else condition we are just returning here no active session found. Then we have our server.listen on our port number 3500, and we are starting the server. So now let's start the server and see is it working or not. Here we have Node.js, so it's saying server started on port 3500. So now let's run this API in the Postman, and let's see what the message we get here. So here we have the API here, and we are just passing here user ID as a snippet coder, and let's see what the message will come. So here we are getting error message. So now let's see where the issue is. So here we forgot to put the slash here. Let's save here and let's start again. So here you can see we are getting status code 400, and we are getting a no active session found because we have not yet started any WebSocket and all. That's why we are getting this message, and this user is not found in our session. So now let's create the Flutter application, and there we will do the integration and all. So now let's move further. So now we have to create the Flutter application. For that we have to just open here and we have to write here cd app, and here we have to write the command here flutter create dot. So now our application is created here, you can see here. So first of all we have to just add the package here. So here we have to use the package that is socketio. I will save here. So first of all we have to create one helper file that will be used for communicating the socketio with our Flutter application all, and we will name it as a socket underscore services dot dart file. So we are going to make it as a singleton class, and so that we can use it anywhere without worrying about our object to be recreated and all. And we can also reuse the same object anywhere. We have to name it as a class socket service. Then here we have to make it static here, static final socket service underscore instance is equal to socket service dot underscore internal, and here we have to create a constructor also, socket service dot underscore internal. So this will make our class as a singleton. Here we have to create the object for the io dot socket, and we have to import here socket. Then we have to create two events here, and here we have functions dynamic data on login event, and the second one will be our logout event. And here we have to create the factory socket service, and from here we will return our underscore instance, and this one we will make it as a nullable. So now here we have to write one method that will be used for the connect and the listen, void connect and listen, and here we will check if socket is equal to null. We have to create the object here, socket is equal to io.io, and here we have to pass the URL, and the URL we are using here http:/localhost 3500. Here we have option builder dot set transports, and here we have to tell we are using here web socket dot set extra headers if we want to pass any extra header and all, but here we don't require. And here we have the build. After that we will call the events here socket dot on connect event, and we will print here print connected to socket. Then here we have our socket dot on, and here we have to write our session expired, and here we have the data here, whatever the data we are getting from that event. So here we are just listening for the session expired event, and whenever the data we are getting, that we are just passing here in this function so that we can use it anywhere we want. And here we have to write on logout event dot call, and here we have to pass the data here. In the same way we can do for the login also. We will just copy this one and we will paste here, and here we will change it to session join. Here we will change it to on login event. So all this connect and listen we can call it from anywhere in our application, and whenever the data will come from the socket, it will call that event listener and all. Here we will use for emit the data from our application to the WebSocket, and here we will write void join session we have to pass the username here, string user ID. Here we have to write socket.emit. We have to give the event name user join, and here the user ID will be passed. So this will be the same thing. Like, let me open here. Here we have the APIs. You can see side by side. So here in the API we have this one, socket on event. So here in the API we are just listening for the socket event, and we are emitting from here. We are emitting with this event user join, and we are just passing this user ID, and from here we are getting that user ID, and here we are just emitting the data from the API, and we are just listening for that data in our Flutter application on the basis of this socket.on event. So this is like a two-way binding and all. So now let's move further, and here we have to write our last method, that will be void dispose, and we have to check here if socket not equal to null. We have to call here socket dot disconnect. Here we have socket is equal to null. So now let's move further, and we will create our one file here, and we will name it as a home_page.dart file. In the main.dart file we will remove all the unnecessary code also, and here we will create stateful widget home page. Here we will map it with our home page, and we will import here. So now write the integration of this socket here. Here we will create the object for our where socket service is equal to socket service. Then here we have one message, socket message variable, that we will use whenever any message came from our socket, that we will display here. Here we have the scaffold widget. Here we have app bar. Here we have the title here, text widget, socket IO. Here we have the body here. We will write the center widget, child, we are using a text widget. Here we will map our socket message. So here in the initialize we have to write some code here, @override void initialize state super.initialize state. Now here we have to call our socket service dot connect and listen. Then we have our events here, socket service dot on login event. We have is equal to data here. So whatever the data we are getting here, we have to put it here, set state, and we will map that data here with our socket message is equal to this data here. So in the same way we have to copy this one, and we will paste here, and here we will change it to on logout event. Here we have this socket message equal to this message. So all this event will be listener. These are the event listener here. Whenever any login event is happen, we will get the message there, and we will set this message here, and same for the logout here. Then we have to call here our join session here, and we have to pass our user ID. Socket service is dot join session, and we have to pass here snippet coder. So now let's run the application, see is it working or not. So here it is saying connected to socket, but we are not getting any message here. So let's see where the issue is. So here in the API we are getting some error here. Let's see. So here the issue is, here we have provided socket ID, but here we have to write here socket.id. We will paste here, and we will reload the service here, and the application we will reload again. So now you can see here we are getting here your session has been started here, and this message is coming from the API, and you can see here we are getting here connected the user IDs, that socket ID and all. So now let's run that API for the logout and see that message is coming or not here. So here, first of all, I will put the wrong username. I will click on the send. You can see here no active session found, and the message here is the same, your session has been started. Now I will put the valid one and I will click on the send here. You can see log out successfully, and here also the message change here, your session has been terminated. So in this way we can do the communication of our socket of our server and the client side, and we can easily communicate both with the help of the socket programming and all. So I hope you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, comment, share. I will come back soon with another awesome video. Thank you for watching the video.